that's inside of me, feeling like a melody, just like a flame. There's a reason in the things I do, feeling like it's very true, not like a game. Feel the gift, you know that I receive, that is what I believe, and I do. Feeling like the very heart of me, it is just a part of me.
We choose to go to the moon.
In 1962, President Kennedy promises that an American will walk on the moon before the end of the decade. After he's assassinated in Dallas in November 1963, Lyndon Johnson becomes president. No American or Russian spacecraft has been sent into space for 14 months. The competition's being played out in the research centers. On April the 8th, 1964, NASA launches the Gemini program. It's an essential step towards the Apollo program, which will put 2 men on the moon, and before the Soviets do. In total, there are about 30 of those conquerors of space. To the 7 pioneers of the Mercury program have been added 9, then 14 candidates for the conquest of the moon. Dick Slayton, their boss, puts Gus Grissom in charge of looking after them all as the Gemini program rolls out. Gone are the days when NASA blamed Grissom for losing his capsule in the ocean 4 years earlier. Grissom takes the initiative of redesigning the vessel's controls so the astronauts can take full control. They'll be pilots, not just passengers. Gemini's mission is to manage to tether 2 ships to each other. Then, to get a man out walking in space, as the prelude to a successful moon landing. The departure of Gemini 3 with a crew of 2 is announced for March 23, 1965, from Cape Canaveral, now renamed Cape Kennedy. Then, with just 5 days to go, the Soviets put Alexei Leonov into orbit.
The Russians surprised with another first in the person of Alexei Leonov, who they say became the first man to walk around in space.
Ever faster, ever higher. 200 kilometers of altitude at 28,000 kilometers an hour. A man floats for the first time in space. It's just a 10-minute expedition, but the Soviets show they're always ahead of the Americans. Sorry, taunt the Moscow newspapers, but it's the moon we're aiming for. On March the 23rd, as planned, NASA launches Gemini 3 into orbit. Grissom's obliged to take over because Alan Shepard, the space pioneer, has been ruled out for health reasons. After his Mercury flight of 1959, Grissom's the first astronaut to perform a second mission. 45 million viewers watched the liftoff of the Titan II rocket carrying Grissom and John Young, the second astronaut, aboard the Gemini capsule. For 5 hours, the 2 astronauts, stuck there on the same seats, test the capsule, changing trajectory. Sometimes higher, sometimes lower. Essential advances for the continuation of the space program. Grissom is now forgiven and enjoys the trust of his bosses. He's in a good position to be a part of the crew that will one day go to the moon. President Johnson, ever the politician, intends to make the most of the mission's success. He tells Grissom and Young, "The country is proud and very grateful to you." At NASA headquarters, the engineers have decided to speed up their program. Stung by the Soviet successes, the Americans plan the launch of one of their own into space in June 1965. The two astronauts chosen for the Gemini 4 mission, James McDivitt and Ed White, studied together at the University of Michigan. This launch is urgent, so they're given accelerated training. To go out into space, Ed White wears a jumpsuit padded with 21 different layers of materials. It'll be 120 degrees in the sun and minus 100 in the shade. Another of their tasks will be to test different food on board for longer trips.
All systems are good at this time. The launch control...
On June the 3rd, 1965, Gemini 4 has been in orbit for 4 days. At the time, the longest flight undertaken by NASA.
Guidance reports the flight trajectory looks very, very close to right on the nominal trajectory. Flight staging, and it's been confirmed here on the ground. That looks good.
At Cape Kennedy, Patricia and Pat, the astronauts' wives, are admitted to the control room.
And here comes Mrs. Pat McDivitt, the wife of astronaut command pilot James McDivitt. We'd like to find out how you're feeling.
Fine.
And what are you going to do here today? What's your reason for coming here?
Check on what Jim's doing. I haven't made any yet. Jim? Jim?
Huh?
Do you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Well, you're doing great.
Yeah, we cover a lot of territory up here. How are you?
I'm fine, and how are you?
Good. How are the kids making up?
Fine, fine. They think you're at the Cape.
After 3 orbits of the Earth, between Hawaii and Mexico, White slips out of the ship, secured only by an 8-meter-long cord.
Am I in your view, Jimbo? Well, you know, I can't see it on the screen. Don't sweat it. I'll come over to you. Okay, I rolled up and I'm rolling to the right now. Under my own influence. There goes this. Looks like a thermal glass, Jim. It is. Now I've come above the spacecraft. I'm going to back down now. I'm under my own control. Okay, I'm coming over.
He performs pirouettes with his oxygen propellant.
Is he taking pictures?
12 minutes of bliss.
No, I think you're doing fine. What I'd like to do is...
I could see the outline of cities, the roads, the wakes of boats on the sea.
Yeah, I noticed that. You get far enough away. No.
Texas, remote your air to ground. California, go local. You got about 5 minutes.
And when Grissom from the control room gives him the order to get back into the ship, White is prey to the intoxication of space. And it feels like the saddest moment of his life.
The flight director says get back in.
Okay. Where are we open now? I don't know. We're coming over to the west end. They want you to come back in now. Back in? Back in. Coming in.
White and McDivitt's mission is an important step towards the conquest of the moon. Lyndon Johnson is satisfied. In Ed White, he sees his hero, his Christopher Columbus, as John Glenn had been Kennedy's.
Grateful for what you've done and particularly for your safe return.
You've both written your names in history and in our hearts.
At Cape Kennedy, the engineer von Braun is working simultaneously on the upcoming Apollo program. He's designing the Saturn V rocket, 111 meters high and 2,900 tons on ignition to launch the Apollo capsules into orbit. The 3,650,000 liters of fuel, the equivalent of 100 rail tanker wagons, feeds 95 engines. All of America's aeronautics industry is mobilized. The first story is built by Boeing, the second by North American Rockwell, the third by McDonnell Douglas. IBM, the mission brain, designs the computers. In just a few months, the duration of flights has been prolonged. And to distract the astronauts, NASA establishes a musical program, one which brushes aside classical music, which makes occupants neurotic and favors fashionable pop. And they'll need it for the next Gemini mission, which will last 14 days. 2 capsules, Gemini 6 and 7, will fly in the same orbit. After 2 unsuccessful attempts to launch, the 2 Gemini capsules approach each other, 40 meters apart. Then just 30 centimeters. So close that the 4 astronauts can wave to one another from porthole to porthole. Lowell, Schirra, Stafford, and Borman. Gemini 6 returns to Earth, while Lowell and Borman continue their journey for 2 long weeks, during which they will be monitored to see how their organisms adapt to an unusual environment. On the eve of her husband's return, Susan Borman buys the family Christmas tree. This long night of prayer preceding Frank's return she calls the Death Watch. Wives are under orders not to express their anxieties because there's a high chance their husband will be chosen to be the first man on the moon.
Were you able to talk with your husbands today?
No. Oh, no. There are no plans for that.
Did you send them any messages?
Oh, they got word through that we were there.
Did you have anything to say to them?
No.
The return of Gemini 7 is smooth. But the flight was trying. The astronauts were unable to stretch their limbs. Frank Borman, the toughest of the crew, returns very weakened. In private, the head of NASA is wary of the silence of the Soviets. He admits to President Johnson, "If our adversaries win the battle for the moon, the political price to pay will be considerable." This is the man who will in July '69 be the first to set foot on the moon. Neil Armstrong. He doesn't know it yet. Does he even dream of it? At the age of 35, Neil has been one of the 9 in the Gemini program since 1962. He's a civilian and will go on his first space flight with David Scott. It's thanks to his cool-headed self-control that the 2 men come back safe and sound, and that NASA will choose him. Aboard Gemini 8, Armstrong and Scott had the task of docking 2 vessels. The first, named the Agena, takes off without passengers. 90 minutes later, it's the turn of Gemini 8.
Roger, understand. Visual, Gina 76 miles.
Hello, Houston, this is Gemini 8. We're station keeping.
Armstrong and Scott meet up with the Agena 5 hours later.
Okay, Gemini 8, we have TM solid. You're looking good on the ground. Go ahead and dock. I think we're going to hold off this SPC thing until he does get docked. Okay, go ahead with your memory compare.
Man, that's great. Man,
The 2 astronauts succeed in linking the 2 capsules.
I'll check your old status display for you.
Suddenly, though, the 3 tons of Gemini 8 start a frenzied rotation, shaking in all directions.
If you run into trouble, just send in command 400 to turn it off and take control of the spacecraft. Did you copy that? We understand.
As a seasoned test pilot, Armstrong keeps his cool and detaches the 2 vessels. In vain. The spinning persists. It isn't the second satellite that's vibrating, it's their own capsule. Both men are on the verge of losing consciousness. To avoid panic, Houston cuts off all communication with Janet and Barbara, their wives. Armstrong starts up the return engines, and the infernal dance stops. They're safe and sound. Lost in the night, they descend over the Congo before splash landing 35 minutes later, 800 kilometers from Japan. The missions of 1966 reveal serious problems when astronauts go out into space. One struggled to get back into the capsule. The other fainted in panic. The malfunctions are mounting up, and the outright abandoning of the moon program is envisaged. There will be one last flight to dispel the engineers' fears. Gemini 12. For his mission, Buzz Aldrin trains in a swimming pool to prepare for his walk in space. With talent and intelligence, he corrects and improves the techniques of his predecessors. He carries out 3 sorties, one of them more than 2 hours long, during which he cables, unscrews, installs. He shows such mastery that the process is relaunched. On board his Gemini 12 capsule, Aldrin takes the first selfie in space. Then he completes the docking of the 2 vessels. With the success of this flight, he in turn places himself in a good position to head to the moon. In 1967, Lyndon Johnson's America sees the Vietnam War compete with violent racial revolts. 18 months away from elections, Johnson, the president in difficulty, is hoping for a success in the field of space to ensure his re-election. For studies show a growing number of Americans prefer the struggle against pollution and poverty to the conquest of the moon.
We need that money for other things instead of going on the moon. What's the purpose? So I think there's a purpose right here on Earth.
How many launches have you seen?
Close to 10, I think.
You get kind of tired of them?
After a while, they do get boring.
The president is getting impatient. The White House puts pressure on NASA. Selected for the first flight of the Apollo program, Ed White, the first American to be launched into space. Roger Bruce Chaffee, one of the 9 newcomers. And Gus Grissom, the old-timer, on his 3rd mission. Unlucky but likable, Gus Grissom doesn't tell a soul. But he has already been designated to be one of the first 3 men to set foot on the moon. Apollo 1 is NASA's most expensive launch ever. The accumulated delays and many failures worry Gus Grissom. Electrical problems are affecting the smooth running of the tests. He doubts the reliability of the capsule. The manufacturer hasn't respected the specifications. But for the excited journalists, Grissom just smiles. It's 6:31 p.m. when Grissom, White, and Chaffee walk towards their destiny. Grissom's worried. Should he blow the whistle on this program? But he has agreed to undergo a simulation under the conditions of a real flight. Betty, his wife, has said to him, "Gus, promise me not to go up unless you feel everything is good and right." They die, burned alive in seconds. The pure oxygen has caught fire due to a short circuit. At NASA headquarters in Houston, their colleagues and friends go to pieces.
America's first 3 Apollo astronauts were trapped and killed by a flash fire that swept their moonship early tonight during a launch pad test at Cape Kennedy in Florida. Virgil Gus Grissom, 40 years old, Edward White, 36 years old, and rookie astronaut Roger Chaffee, 31 years old.
It's Shiro's wife who announces the news to Betty Grissom, who remains dignified. As for Marta Chaffee, she whispers, "I'd understood, but I needed to hear it." As for White's wife, she bursts into tears. As the widow of the oldest astronaut, Betty Grissom insists on a national funeral at Arlington Cemetery. And it's she who leads the cortege. Half an hour apart, in the presence of President Johnson, Gus Grissom and Walter Chaffee are buried side by side. The Mercury astronauts flank the coffin. Shepard, present. Glenn, present. Carpenter, present. Slayton, present. On Walter Schirra's arm, Betty looks at them and says, they know that Gus was the best of all of them. She's dressed in navy blue because Gus hated black. He also asked her to have a party if he were to disappear, which was a good thing. She had no desire to don the veil of the grieving widow. Patricia, White's widow, attended the burials of Gus and Chaffee. But she wanted Ed to be buried at West Point, the military school, where she and he had met. The ceremonies held in the presence of the nearest and dearest, Armstrong, McDivitt, Aldrin, Borman, and his wife. Patricia White keeps repeating, "Who am I now? Who am I?" The capsule had caught fire due to a short circuit. The investigation established that the electrical installation had been sloppy, and that the pure oxygen in the capsule was madness and would take more than a minute to evacuate. NASA's indicted for conflict of interest between some directors and industrialists of the aeronautical industry. But the culprit can be sought as far as the White House. The next 5 Apollo missions will take place without astronauts on board. Engineers check everything. Engine failures, short circuits, failures that defy reason, and the Apollo program can resume its course. On April the 24th, 1967, the Soviet cosmonaut Komarov crashes on a Soyuz capsule flight. As for the first hero of the space adventure, Yuri Gagarin, he in turn dies in the course of a training flight. Since the disappearance of Khrushchev and the death of their strategist Korolev, the conquest of the moon seems to be eluding the Soviets. On October the 11th, 1968, more than a year and a half after the tragedy of Apollo 1, Walter Schirra goes into orbit for 11 difficult days. It's the first manned flight since the catastrophe. Apollo 7 must validate the latest transformations and enchant America after a painful 1968, which saw the death of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy. A month later, America elects its new president, Richard Nixon. In the Nevada desert, astronauts learn to use a camera in space. The Apollo 8 flight is looming, but things are tense. The CIA declares the Soviets are about to launch a giant rocket to the moon. As a precaution, NASA doesn't take a Christmas break, and the launch is scheduled for December the 21st, 1968, with Frank Borman as commander, accompanied by William Anders and James Lovell. Aboard a von Braun rocket, the biggest ever imagined, Saturn V. Their mission? To get to the dark side of the moon, photograph it, and come back. An astronaut's wife is used to concealing her fear. But since the death of Grissom, Susan Borman's started drinking. The Apollo 8 mission panics her. NASA has given them a 50% chance of coming back alive. She's convinced Frank won't be coming back. She's already written her funeral oration. But Frank promises Susan he'll leave NASA at the end of the mission.
I'd love nothing better than to make a beautiful, profound statement for you that would be earth-shaking for everyone, but I'm just speechless. This hasn't sunk in yet to me, and
how about just a big smile?
Yes, I can muster a big smile.
On Sunday morning, Susan goes to confession. Then she goes to bed. She buries her head in the pillow. The radio communications turned down low.
Give us clues to what it looks like from way up there. I can see the entire Earth now out of the center window.
When he opens the shutter, Frank Borman sees the Earth in its entirety.
Central America, the whole northern half of Central America, in fact, all the way down through Argentina and down through Chile. You picked a good day for it. Show you the Earth. It's a beautiful, beautiful view.
The vessel makes 3 orbits around the Earth and then heads to the moon.
Covers of white clouds. Very, very beautiful. All right, Houston, you're looking good.
It's December the 24th, Christmas Eve on Earth.
This transmission is coming to you approximately halfway between the moon and the Earth. Danny, looking pretty small down there now, Houston. Michael, I keep imagining it as if I'm a slowly traveler from another planet when I think about the Earth from this altitude, whether I think it'd be inhabited or not. You don't see anybody waving, is that what you're saying?
The moon is so close that it blocks the view of the 3 astronauts. The capsule moves into lunar orbit, 365,000 kilometers from home.
I think the best way to describe this area is a vastness of black and white. Lonely, forbidding type existence or expanse of nothing. And it makes you realize just what you have back there on Earth. The Earth from here is a grand oasis of the big vastness of space.
A human is about to discover the hidden face of the moon.
See you on the other side.
From this moment, communication stops. Apollo 8 disappears from the radar. An endless silence of 247 seconds. But Susan Borman doesn't care a hoot about the moon or Santa. What she wants is Frank back, safe and sound.
God called the dry land Earth.
While on Earth, millions of humans are celebrating, the occupants of Apollo 8 marvel. Christmas Eve dinner is frugal. Crackers and soda, as decided by Borman.
A Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good Earth.
And also, we're in a period of relaxed vigilance.
Very good. We'll relax, you be vigilant.
The lunar surface appears to them dark and dusty, holed by meteorites. Their mission is to locate a site for the moon landing of the future mission Apollo 11. It'll be the Sea of Tranquility. The first Earthrise seen from the moon is dazzling. "We came to discover the moon, but we actually discovered the Earth," exclaims Anders. Anders, feverish, takes a first photo, then Borman a second, this time in color. The impact of the mission is considerable. 500 million viewers around the world.
Mrs. Borman, the flight's over. What did you...
I'm taking each happy moment as it comes, and this is my happiest, I assure you. There really is a Santa Claus, and my husband said it, and it sounded marvelous.
As for Frank Borman, he keeps his promise to Susie and retires, and becomes special advisor for space affairs to Nixon. With the death of Grissom and the withdrawal of Borman, Neil Armstrong becomes the first astronaut who will tread lunar soil. Coming from deep in America's heartland, this deserving student was a military pilot in Korea. No one knows that this silent, uncharismatic man is mourning his 2-year-old daughter. Armstrong will never be the idol of crowds. He's a civilian among the military, which pleases President Nixon, who doesn't want the moon landing to be seen as an act of war. But more than anything, Armstrong has the skills and the cool-headed composure needed.
Time period when most people will be wondering, well, what does it look like out there, or what do you see? My wife and children have...
Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins complete the crew. Collins will stay aboard the Columbia vessel, and Aldrin will accompany Armstrong to the moon in a 4-legged, beetle-shaped module, the Lunar Excursion Module. Grumman, the manufacturer of this machine covered with knobs, buttons, and flashing lights, has already tested it for many years in its laboratory. It's a machine as light as a sheet of cigarette paper. On these simulations depends the happy outcome of the mission. Armstrong and Aldrin tirelessly repeat the gestures that will allow them to face any eventuality down there in the hangar. These reconstructed images of the moon in a realistic setting are close to what will be discovered 3 years later. The launch of Apollo 11 is scheduled for July the 16th, 1969. In the event of a disaster, the protocol has considered all the possibilities. Nixon would address the nation. Televisions would stop broadcasting images, and communication between astronauts and their families would be interrupted. Only a priest would keep in touch with them. At dawn on July the 16th, 1969, a year and a half before the date set by Kennedy, the Saturn V rocket thrusts into the sky. At its apex, the capsule Columbia and the lunar module for moon landing, Eagle. The emotion is palpable around the world.
Firing command coming in now.
On the beaches of Florida, 1 million people. And at the Cape, 5,000 guests and 3,500 journalists, all invited to the event. Plans are laid down to leave in the lunar dust 2 medallions in memory of Russian cosmonauts Yuri Gagarin and Vladimir Komarov, as well as a plaque dedicated to the Apollo 1 dead. In their travel bags, the three carry 1,000 items belonging to their families and friends. Tie pins, cufflinks, crosses, a mother's bracelet, and flags. And Aldrin has tucked away a little wine in a chalice and bread for communion that he wishes to celebrate. Werner von Braun, the father of space travel, is seeing his life's dream come true.
10, 9, ignition sequence start.
At 9:30 a.m., Saturn V takes off. "11 minutes after liftoff, the capsule has completed an orbit and a half of the Earth. Then it's detached from the third stage of the Saturn V rocket, accompanied by the music of Dvorak, chosen by Armstrong as soothing.
We discovered that
76 hours later, Columbia's 380,000 kilometers from the Earth, orbiting the Moon. On July the 20th, 1969, when they wake up, the three swallow a cup of coffee and nibble some tepid bacon. Armstrong and Aldrin attach themselves to the metal walls of the module. At 1:11 p.m., Collins, alone in Columbia, watches them begin the descent. "Take care, guys." "See you later," Armstrong responds.
Capcom, we're go for undocking.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. You're looking great. How you doing, Control? We look good here, fine. How about you, Telcom? Go. Guidance, you happy? Go. Fido. Go. 2,000 feet. 2,000 feet. Into the ag. 47 degrees. Roger. 47 degrees.
2 hours later, at 1,800 meters above the lunar surface, Eagle's computer sounds an alert. "It's nothing. We're continuing," they're told.
Same type, we're go, flight. Okay, we're go. We're go. Same type, we're go.
At 30 meters from the ground, they fly over a vast crater surrounded by loose stones.
35 degrees. 750.
The computer has let them miss the landing zone by more than 6 kilometers.
540 feet.
The alarm goes off several times. Neil Armstrong reacts and takes control. Aldrin says a prayer. Eagle only has enough fuel for 1 more minute.
200 feet, 4.5 down, 5.5 down. 100 feet, 3.5 down, 9 forward.
Armstrong looks for a place to land. His experience as a test pilot is decisive.
60 seconds. Lights on, forward.
30 seconds fuel left.
40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. Straight shadow. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 30 seconds. Forward, drift. Contact light. Okay, engine stop.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
The epic journey of Apollo 11. Today, a landing on the moon.
They have to wait several hours before opening the door. Aldrin takes out his chalice and celebrates communion.
At the foot of the ladder.
There are long seconds of waiting at the bottom of the ladder before Armstrong sets down his foot. Neil will say that he recited a prayer to honor a promise made to his grandmother.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I only go in a fraction of an inch, maybe an eighth of an inch, but I can see the footprints of my boots and the treads and the fine sandy particles. Okay, your bliss looks like it's clear and okay. The toes are about to come over the sill. Okay, now drop your bliss down. There you go, you're clear.
Armstrong films Aldrin's descent. The 2 astronauts are on lunar soil.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here.
A magnificent desolation.
For a final orientation, we'd like it to come left about 5 degrees over. Okay, that looks good there, Neil. Columbia, this is...
Aldrin plants the American flag. Under the layer of dust, the ground is hard. The flag floats thanks to the metal rod that holds it up. Protocol requires that it be saluted.
Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. They're setting up the flag now.
At the same time, the caretaker of the Arlington Cemetery claims to have discovered a fresh bouquet of flowers, accompanied by a note upon which is written, "They succeeded, President Kennedy." Shortly afterwards, Richard Nixon, alongside Frank Borman, his space advisor, contacts them.
That would be an honor.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil.
The president reminds the world that we must redouble our efforts for peace on Earth.
Buzz, this is Houston.
Bag on shoulder, they collect 22 kilograms of lunar pebbles.
Prior to commencing your EVA termination activities, over.
In the distance, the Earth appears to them immense and colorful. Here is the only photograph of Armstrong on the moon. There, in the reflection in Aldrin's helmet. On July the 21st, after only 4 hours on the lunar surface, Armstrong and Aldrin return to the module. They spend an icy night hunkered down on the floor. During their sleep, a few hundred miles away, the unmanned Soviet probe Luna 15 crashes onto the moon. Left behind in the competition with the Americans, the Russians had imagined they'd at least be the first to bring back samples of lunar rocks.
Lithium hydroxide canister. Make that one of the last things you do in getting ready for the deep rest if you can. Over.
21 hours after Armstrong's first step, he starts the procedure for return. And suspense reigns again. A 3.5-hour flight to reach Columbia. 60 hours of travel then. And as for the module, it will take several weeks to crash onto the moon.
We're at entry time.
On their return, the three astronauts declare to customs officers the contents of what they brought back in their knapsack, namely black dust and lunar pebbles with a metallic, acrid smell like gunpowder. Soviet television doesn't broadcast the images, but 100 high officials, including Brezhnev, watch the US success on screen.
Those two Americans stepped on the moon.
600 million people witness this page in the history of humanity. Nobody wonders why there are no photos of Armstrong there on the moon. But the rumor is that Aldrin wasn't happy not to be the first man on the moon, so didn't take any shots of Neil.